Let me ask you something straight up. What if the real power isn't in what you say, but in what you don't? What if silence isn't weakness, but a weapon, forged in restraint and hardened by pain? See, most guys panic when they lose her. They write long texts, ask mutual friends, search for meaning in her silence while drowning in their own. But not you, not anymore. Because what if I told you that the most dangerous man in her world isn't the one begging for her back? It's the one who walks away without a word, the one who doesn't flinch, doesn't explain, doesn't chase, just disappears, into purpose. This isn't about playing games, it's about reclaiming self. And what she feels when you don't chase her, that's what we're going to talk about today. So sit back, focus in, because this is where the healing begins and the rise starts. Point 1. The stillness that screams. You think silence is nothing, but in reality, it's everything. Because when a man who used to care suddenly goes still, that silence becomes a storm in her head. She expects emotion, reaction, some sign that you're still orbiting her. But now, you're just gone. You stopped giving her access to your emotions. You stopped feeding her ego with those just checking in texts, and that stillness echoes. It forces her to sit with a question she never thought she'd ask. Why does his absence feel louder than his presence? You're not ghosting, you're detaching, and in that space, she starts hearing things she never heard when you were around. The sound of her own regret, the sting of her own choices, the fear that maybe you were the real thing, and she let it slip. Point 2. You let her win, then walked away from the prize. She thinks she won. She got the last word. She pulled away, maybe even blocked you. Cool, let her have the trophy. But here's the twist. You're the kind of man who doesn't beg to hold what wasn't meant to be kept. You let her win the game. Then you walked away from the board. Now that same victory feels hollow. She expected a battle. She expected drama. But instead, you gave her space. You gave her peace. And nothing is more unnerving to someone used to control than a man who doesn't fight for a cage he already freed himself from. Point 3. Masculinity in motion is unreachable. When a man turns inward, truly turns inward, and starts building instead of begging, he becomes something different. He becomes unreachable. Not in a bitter, I'll show you kind of way, but in a focused, mission-driven kind of way. You're not sulking in the corner anymore. You're in the gym, you're in your craft, you're in your silence, and she feels it, even if she says nothing, especially if she says nothing. Because feminine energy is drawn to masculine direction, and when you stop orbiting her, you become the sun again. Warm, distant, impossible to ignore. Point 4. The mystery she created but can't solve. You didn't pull away to make her miss you. You pulled away because staying would have cost you, but now you've become something she never expected. A mystery. You were once so open, so predictable. Now, you're unreadable, unreachable. And here's the twist. Humans don't obsess over what they understand. They obsess over what they don't. She's scrolling, she's checking, she's replaying old conversations in her mind, trying to figure out what happened, trying to rewrite the story. But you're already in a different chapter, and she's not in it. Point 5. Your healing feels like her punishment. You didn't cut her off to punish her. You did it to protect yourself. But healing, real healing, can feel like punishment to someone who thought they'd always have access to your pain. Because the version of you who would have waited, who would have fought, who would have begged, he's gone. He healed. Quietly. And she's left to sit in the silence of that transformation. It's not revenge, it's revelation. She expected time to make you softer. Instead, it made you sharper. She thought she broke you, but all she did was break the version of you that needed her. Now, you stand on the other side, whole. Point 6. When she realizes you were the piece. At first, she thinks she found freedom, less texts, no expectations, no emotional accountability. But then the noise dies down. The new options aren't hitting the same. The late night calls don't feel right. And that's when it hits her. You were the piece, not the drama, not the chaos, not the control. You were the safe place, the anchor. And now you're gone. Not because you hate her, but because you loved you enough to walk. Point 7. The masculine frame. she can't rebuild. Let me tell you something rare. A man in his masculine energy who refuses to be manipulated is irreplaceable. She can't rebuild what you were. She can try, find someone else, test the waters, but that presence, that calm, that strength wrapped in restraint, that's not common, that's not swiped, that's forged. And now that she's outside your frame, she's realizing she was safer inside it, even when she didn't understand it, even when she thought she could find better. She was never looking for a guy who liked her. She was looking for a man she couldn't move. And now that you've gone silent, she sees that man was you. Point 8. When detachment turns to desire. At first, she confused your silence for weakness. She thought you'd crack, eventually. She thought you'd reach out, break the tension, try again. But you didn't. You stayed silent, stayed focused, stayed grounded, and slowly, your detachment stopped looking like distance and started looking like strength. Now, she's not annoyed, she's curious, because this isn't how it usually goes. Men chase, men plead, men wait, but not you. You didn't freeze her out, you just outgrew the situation, and that is where the real shift happens. See, women are drawn to certainty, not the loud, desperate kind, but the quiet, unshakable kind. And when she sees that she no longer moves you, not because you're angry, but because you're evolved, that's when desire creeps in. You became the man she once had, and now can't touch. Point 9. The peace. She can't replicate. She'll try to move on, swipe a little, laugh a little, pretend a little, but deep down, she's not searching for someone new. She's searching for the feeling you gave her, even if she never admitted it when she had it. That peace, that grounded presence, that subtle strength that made her feel both free and safe at the same time, it's gone. And no matter who she talks to, no matter how many options she stacks, she keeps running into a wall. Because the peace she once had, the calm that came from your presence, can't be replaced by noise. She let it go when she didn't recognize its value. Now she's haunted by the calm she didn't know was rare. And that realization, it doesn't hit her like thunder. It hits like a whisper. That won't leave her alone. Point 10. You don't need closure, you became. It hears the truth no one tells you. You don't need her to apologize. You don't need her to explain. You don't even need her to regret. Because when you truly let her go, you stopped needing anything from her at all. No last words, no final text, no ending scene. Because you didn't just move on. You transformed. You became your own closure. You answered your own questions. You stitched your own wounds. And that is what makes you untouchable. She may circle back one day. She may reach out, test the waters, try to reopen the door. But by then, you won't be standing in the same place anymore. You're not who you were, and she can't reach who you've become, because real growth doesn't chase closure, it becomes it. So what does she feel when you don't chase? Confusion, doubt, longing, and eventually, loss. But this isn't about her anymore, it's about you. Because this isn't a tactic, it's a turning point. You don't chase anymore, because you don't need to. Your silence doesn't come from pain, it comes from power. So let her wonder, let her regret, let her scroll in silence while you build in strength, because in the end, a man who doesn't chase rises.